Welcome back again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for coming back so promptly. That's great. It means we can get our discussions away very quickly. This session is directed at technical improvements for the EPC, and this is your chance to give us an honest review and evaluation. In this panel discussion, we're looking at how things could improve in practice. So we want to consider the procedures, the formalities, the bureaucracy, etc. in this panel. Is the bureaucracy asking the right questions? Is the bureaucracy asking for the correct documents? Are there translation or language problems? Are there questions of trust between member states? How could the timescale be improved in the process? In short, what technical changes could be made that would improve things? Lots to think about. Let's introduce the panel. And I have immediately on my right Zara Green from the UK Assistance Centre for Professional Qualifications. And next to her, we have Katja Virtanen from the National Supervisory Authority for Welfare and Health in Finland. Beside her, Seni Sari from the Ministry of Health in the Netherlands. Then Alexander Ionut Chiotu from Romania, from the National Centre for Recognition and Equivalence of Diplomas at the Ministry of National Education. And then at the end, oh, I beg your pardon, I've skipped one, I've jumped one. That is Alexander at the end. And beside him is Luc Machon, President for the European Association of Real Estate Professions. Luc, let's start with you and estate agents. How smoothly has the adoption of the EPC been in your area of work? Because I know that key for you is communication and clarity.
Well, let's start with good news. Our sector has the least issues with EPC. Bad news is that we have the least number of applications. So if we look at our sector, what are the problems that we encounter? I think that it starts with differences in regulation in the member states. Very specifically, for our profession, there is an insurance issue, meaning that every country throughout Europe has its own demands concerning insurance. And it's quite difficult when traveling throughout Europe to meet these different demands. Very specifically also for our profession is the so-called U-turn problem. As I told you, we have some differences in regulations. Some countries, like for example Austria or Belgium, are highly regulated. Other countries, like for example the Netherlands, are not regulated. And then the issue might be that someone who can't apply for a regulated country goes to a non-regulated country and tries by the EPC and its procedures to come back. That are some problems. Are there things to resolve? Are there major issues that should go better? Well, of course, there is always a time issue. If you look at the procedure in total, it will take up to several months. And also in our profession, we have to state that some countries work faster than others do. There is still a language issue. There are a number of member states who are still asking for translation of documents, which implies a certain cost and will take away the speed of the procedure. And of course, the administration asked is sometimes very heavy. So in general, if the answer to how smoothly did we adopt, I think that the procedure is efficient for our profession, but is absolutely not known. If we look at 90 applications during the first year for a sector that has a number of European chains, European brands working throughout Europe, then these results have to be improved, can be improved by better communication. One other thing that is crucial for us, there is a problem with the definition of our profession, and that is quite typical. The recognition, the European Professional Card values for real estate agents. The real estate agent in Belgium is considered or an intermediator or a real estate manager. In the southern countries like Spain or Italy, the real estate agents and the real estate manager are two totally different professions. And we see that in practice that will give some difficulties in applying the EPC in a correct way, where some countries use it or think they have to use it for, can use it for the real estate manager. Other countries don't.
Look, you have explained where there are difficulties now. We're trying to improve things.
Yes.
How can we improve things best, do you think, when you have these different levels of expertise or professionalism within the, from one country to another? How do we iron out?
Well, if you, first of all, if you look at the current system of EPC, I think there are some time issues, some language issues, and some bureaucracy issues.
Okay.
Let's please look and limit ourselves in obligations. But then again, a more general and underlying problem that has been mentioned during the first part of this workshop. We need a common training network, we need a common reference, and of course that is in the long term, but I think the necessary future for Europe.
Is that a job for the professional bodies, do you think, or is that for the Commission to bring about?
I think we have to work together on this, because apparently if we look at communication for the moment, there's a lot of work to be done, and we don't have to look to each other, we have to work together on this.
So in order for, say, us to come back in 6 months' time and find out that in fact there are more real estate agents who have got their EPC, how do you think things have to, I'm looking for the detail, how things have to be changed during these 6 months?
Well, first of all, communication. That is, I think, and for our sector, a main issue that we, and meaning the professional bodies, the Commission, inform the real estate agents of their possibilities of obtaining an EPC, inform them how to do it. The procedure is quite good for our profession, quite efficient, but I think that the procedure is still quite unknown.
Any thoughts from the floor on this so far? About estate agents, any real estate agents here or anybody who has worked with them who has got a point they want to raise, or suggestions about how things could be improved, particularly from a technical point of view? Not so far? Do bear to...
We checked the list, and happily I'm the only one here, so it gives a certain freedom of speech.
Unchallenged. What was your experience with the simulator on document requirements relevant for the EPC that's available on the EU-Europe website?
Again, that is quite good, but the problem is not within the tool or within the procedure. I think the difficulties are within the large differences between the different countries. And that is an underlying problem that won't be solved by the EPC. For me, it's quite I'm a fan. It's quite an efficient tool.
Thank you. Seni Sari, let's bring in you, Senis, and Katja. I want to explore the use of documentation with you both. What documents do the Netherlands require when bringing workers into the health service in the Netherlands?
Well, we only ask for documents as mentioned in the directive, but you think about ID card, the qualification itself, certificate of good standing, and there was one more. And it differs from the kind of procedure for establishment or for temporary and occasional
You
services.
take the documentation on face value, do you?
As validated by the by the home member state, yeah. We trust the validation of the home member state.
However, Katja, I understand that in your experience in Finland, people are not consistent across member states in the sorts of documentation that they are prepared to accept straight.
There have been situations where the unnecessary documents, certificates, translations, or both have been asked from the professional without a legal ground or duly justified doubts. It may still be challenging to member state to make a clear difference between EPC procedure and the standard application procedure, as this EPC procedure is new to all member states. The repository in the IMI system is open to different kind of interpretations, especially concerning translations. In addition, interpretation of the Commission implementation regulation vary between member states, and this is a very challenging entirety.
So this is interesting. You say that the way that the procedure is worded online creates discrepancies, creates scope for interpretation, and therefore some countries will choose to operate in one way and other countries will choose to operate in another way. So specifically, is there a part in the procedure that you can point at and say to the Commission, change the wording there and things will improve?
I have some suggestions when we are talking about e-repositories. But however, what I stated is that it may be unclear to the member states which are the certificates and or translations that can be asked from the professional and under what kind of circumstances in the light of notifications and Commission implementation regulation. We believe that.
Okay. Sari, do you have any problems with this at all?
Well, we also experienced that member states ask for different documents, and that I don't know if that's a problem with interpretation or the freedom to ask for them. In our experience, we have sent our repository first to the European Commission for approval, and after approval we have filed it in, and we work with the repository as we filed in. But if we see that other member states ask for different documents, it's our obligation to ask for them and to validate them before we transmit the application.
Do you think then, Katja, it's a problem with the documents or the language of the documents at the bottom of it all?
Because we have a multilingual tool to use, I'm referring IMI system. The language should not be a problem, especially in those situations where the definitions and validations of the documents have been made accordingly, and when needed, the additional information field has been used accordingly. Competent authorities can use their own languages in the IMI system. There is an online translation function which other member states can use, that it's not working so badly, I think.
When you say it's not working so badly, it's okay, you mean? The translation facility is okay?
In our experience, but as a host, we have handled approximately 5 to 10 applications, so didn't have so much experience of that.
Okay, let's open this to the floor. I'm interested in the documents that are asked of you. A, do you think those are the correct documents to ask for? And B, they are treated fairly, whatever language they are in? Any thoughts about that? Yep, Gloria at the front. Anybody else that I can pass the microphone to? Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. I miss the floor. Well, related to translation, I don't agree with you, with Poland representative. We have some problems with the translation of the tool. First of all, it's very slow, but the main issue is that it's not very reliable. It's like Google tool, so for us it's much better to work in English, but because the translation is really disappointing.
Okay, so the translation tool you don't feel is the best at all. Anybody else? Any yes or no's about that translation? Any thoughts about it? No? Okay, not at the moment. Gentleman there. Just speak.
National Board of Health and Welfare, Socialstyrelsen, and I would like to point out maybe 3 technical difficulties we face. The first are some about the document required. They are sometimes not very clear to us. Some countries are asking, for example, certificates about applicants' physical or mental health, financial standing or insurance against financial risks arising from their professional liability. and it's documents we don't ask in Sweden. Sometimes it's not very application we would accept in Sweden. We are not sure that the other country absolutely need those documents. Then about the translations, I agree with the Finnish representative about the translations tool. But what we find difficult is documents in themselves. They are not translated, and sometimes, especially when it's not Latin alphabet, or it's very difficult to identify those documents, what they are. Sometimes even they are not mentioned, they are not described in English, or so we cannot identify them at all, even if they are certified.
So what happens then when you get a document that comes that you don't understand?
Sometimes we contact the applicant or the home authority, and there often we get an answer from the applicant. Sometimes the other authority doesn't answer, and that's the third point I wanted to raise. When communicating through the EPC channel, when the EPC application has been sent from the home state to host state, in this case we in Sweden would be host, then it's difficult to have a contact with the home states, because they have considered the case is finished. So it's easier to get a contact through the IME request tool.
I understand. You raised some very interesting points here, and I want to know if the rest of you have found that is similar to your experience of it. We're trying to make the system better. So the best way to make it better is to point out its failings and to work out what solutions can be found. Anything that comes to your minds about improving it, particularly when it comes to documentation and translation of documents? Yeah, gentleman there, lady there.
David Gorria from the European Association for Physiotherapy. In a kind of way, now the member states authorities are sharing the suffering of the applicants in the general system. And they are still trying with the EPC to request the same documents that are in the general system. And the EPC is trying to harmonize the documents to be required. So they need, in a kind of way, try to fit into what is allowed by the system to be required. And as well, we need to understand that we are, in the case of health professionals, moving from different health systems to a different one. So the requirements to practice are not the same. But here, we are not challenging the requirements to practice. We are just recognizing the title.
Thank you.
Anna Lubasińska from Health and Care Professions Council in UK. We have quite a lot of experience with physiotherapists, obviously. You could see stats in the first part. We dealt with around 300.
Just speak up a little bit
we
more.
dealt with around 300 EPC applications. My thoughts are that EPC is working, obviously. People are getting registered, they're migrating. That's really great. We support it wholeheartedly. But I feel that there is few technical issues probably with how the process is organized and how it is supported by the system. And I feel that perhaps few switches would help. It feels sometimes that the applicant themselves, they're not reminded to supply all needed documents. So just to add on to the point about receiving applications that are incomplete in a way because there's translations missing or some documents missing. I feel that the applicant perhaps they probably don't get that checklist to tick off before they send the application. So the home authority quite often ends up with an application with them that is not fully completed.
So
they have
you want the complete application before you start to process?
Obviously, we do. And well, it will always happen that you will receive an application that may be incomplete. The Home Authority has only 2 days to notify the applicant. Is it complete or incomplete? I feel it is a bit too short. So in effect, I think that kind of messes the system up, just to put it simply. So the authority, Home Authority, ends up with an application that may be missing a document or two. They miss the deadline to tell the applicant it is incomplete, the 2 days, they're gone. The applicant, you have to accept it. After a week, it's completed. You can't do anything about it. You have to process it. So obviously they do their best to complete the file, to prepare it for the host authority, but not always they're able to do that within the deadline. So the host authority then ends up with something that is not perfect and not ready to be processed. So I think that perhaps that initial stage where the applicant can submit something that, I'm not saying that we should stop them from submitting applications, but perhaps there should be reminders, there should be checklists, there should be more support for the applicant at the very beginning of this process to send us something that is of a better quality, because it will help everyone along the way, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. If we could move the microphone up here to Danielle, please, as well. Heinrich as well wants a word in. And at the back. Yep.
Hi, yes. I just want to add to what my colleague said regarding the missing documents, is that applicants sometimes would need, for example, 10 documents, upload 2, and then the application goes through. It would be helpful if the system would alert or even stop that application from going through until the individual has actually uploaded 10 documents.
Okay.
That would simplify matters for the home member state.
Another point, I know the Commissioner in the front row and listening very much to this and taking notes, so your points that you raise are being listened to and noted down, okay? And Heinrich, and then a microphone at the very back as well, please.
To the colleague of Sweden, I want to say that the aim of the EPC is to come to that point that we don't need translation documents. That's for me the aim. And if one authority came and said, how can I believe a document which is described in Kyrillish or in Latvia language, I say it is approved by a host country authority. A home country authority, and that's your approval, and you do not need any translation more. This is the great aim of the IMI overview, and that's the point where we should come to.
That's the aim. Thank you. And at the back?
I'm Geraldine Kelly from the Department of Health in Ireland. I think Heinrich's comment applies in relation to automatic recognition. But in relation to the general system, I'd like to ask the panel, how much information do they seek on the individual training and work experience of an applicant?
How much information do they seek about the experience and
formal training
of an
applicant?
Training. Experience and formal training. How much information would you look for on that, Katja?
This is an interesting question, because in the IMI repositories, some member states have not notified, for example, a proof of professional experience or a proof of other relevant training as required documents, and others have. These are, of course, not mandatory, we understand, but if the applicants have any of these documents, the documents may have an impact when the host member state addresses possible need of compensation measures. If these documents have not notified in the IMI system by the host, it can be possible that the home member state is not going to ask the applicant to provide those, of course understanding that only in those situations where the applicant is able or willing to submit those voluntarily. If the application arrives in a traditional way on paper to us, so not handled as an EPC, we always contact the applicant and explain that these documents may have an impact on his or her case and ask if the applicant can or would like to provide these documents. On the EPC process, shouldn't it be the home member states who does this pre-work before transmitting the EPC application to the host member states, especially to the tacit recognition period, even if this can be extended.
Okay, thank you for that. Senis, any thoughts from Geraldine's question? I mean, what information about experience and formal training should be asked for?
That depends on the profession. For physiotherapists, we do ask for proof of professional experience for the qualification, to acknowledge the qualification. Yeah.
Okay. Katja, I think you've got some slides as well you want to talk through. What is your experience of the repository in the IMI system?
So they can be considered in some respect as incomplete. What we mean by this is what I just stated. Mm-hmm. So there are differences between the document requirements notified by member states, even if the procedure according to the directive is the same for all member states when assessing application under the general system of recognition.
Okay, and the next slide.
Oh, these are not important. Can I say one thing?
Yep.
With this? So, some crucial document requirements have not notified also in IMI system by some member states. For example, additional information of the study that it's needed when assessing the EPC application under the general system.
Okay, all right. Any thoughts now from the floor on this? Because it's very important if you want to make your point or add comment to what's been said so far. Nothing yet. We'll move on to another panelist, Alexandru Ionut-Chiuta from Romania, from the National Centre for Recognition and Equivalence of Diplomas at the Ministry of National Education. Now, tell us a bit about Romania, because as I understand it, you had a lot of work to do in introducing the EPC, because internal validation mechanisms for the 5 professions did not actually exist in Romania. So there was a long way to go to start off.
At the launch of the European Professional Card, we had 2 of the current 5 professions not regulated in Romania, namely physiotherapist and real estate agent. For these professions, the IMI-PQ coordinator was registered in IMI as the home member state authority for non-regulated professions. With this role of authority for non-regulated professions, we analyze the specific types of documents we receive via the EPC applications, and we identify and register in IMI, if we need, the relevant authorities for the validation of the documents within these applications, as well as other national authorities if there is a need. I can give a few examples. We register the higher education institutions, the county school inspectorates, the labor authorities, and also the county departments for public health. It helps us with EPCs for physiotherapists. Also, we organized regional training sessions for the new registered authorities and also for old IMI users from existing authorities. We planned new training events also this year from May to September. And some of the training topics of interest include the presentation of the national and European legal framework, the processing of personal data in IMI, an overview of the IMI system and its website and portal. Of course, the European Professional Card is the main topic. Also, we present case studies on the interaction of users with IMI, mainly information requests. Also, we mention IMI repositories, the sample documents for EPC applications, but also the registers of the competent authorities. And as I said, we mention the information requests, but also alerts and notifications for professional qualifications. Also, we organized several awareness-raising activities about EPC. This includes some meetings with representatives of the competent authorities. Also, we created our own surveys for IMI users. We asked them at the national training events about their opinions. We created some web pages, websites with general information, user guides in Romanian, knowledge base. Also, we have some news and videos from the Commission or our own to share on the social networks. We created during the last years some presentation and even e-books like publishing. And also we maintain a mailing list for all IMI users and send them by email any news we have related to EPC. Thank you.
So you've had to build up a very big groundwork in order to get this. And looking at it now, can Romanian workers now get an electronic professional card electronically? Can they go and work in other member states easily? Is it all functioning?
We had some discussions with EPC applicants, and from our experience with EPC applications, we revealed that several host member states authorities used to ask for additional documents after they accepted the complete applications with documents validated by our authority. This includes certified translations for quite a large number of documents without a good justification provided in IMI, but only mentioning that these translations are mandatory for the evaluation of the EPC. Because it's mentioned in the EPC notification, available only for competent authorities. We know, according to a non-paper we received last year from the Commission, this kind of translation should be asked only on specific situations and very well justified. And we also need to discuss with our applicants to explain them they need to provide these documents in IMI. Also, there are additional forms required by the authorities from the host member states, supplementary from the EPC notification, like a registration form. I think it's according to their procedure for registration, but in some cases, we also received some additional documents to be provided by the applicants. Some further details were missing from the submitted documents, and they needed to submit also these documents after the complete file was provided according to the notification to the host member states. Also, we have to be aware that all these supplementary conditions should be met by the applicant in due time, also because there is a deadline, and then the EPC application is rejected and a new application needs to be submitted. Also, I would like to say, it's already mentioned in the issued EPCs, that this certificate does not provide the automatic right to practice a profession if there are any registration requirements or control procedures in place in the country of destination. So consequently, the applicant could be put to follow two procedures to obtain the right to practice in this country.
Is that fair enough, do you think? Or do you want to change that?
Yeah, from our view, we would like to simplify all these procedures and maybe have only one electronic procedure with all the requirements from the beginning.
Okay, all right. Do you see that coming in due course? Do you see that happening?
I think we should be optimistic, but it's a lot of work to do, and it depends how we manage, all of us from all the countries, to implement this. I would also like to say that from our experience, already mentioned today, when we receive the application, we have incomplete files, and also, it's mentioned as an incorrect recognition regime for some cases, because in our country we receive quite a few cases for nurses specialized in balneophysiotherapy for the physiotherapist, and it's a different profession. Also, in some cases, from the technical point of view, we had each page of one document submitted as a separate document, and this takes a lot of time. And actually, we don't have the technical option to delete, to erase each of the supplementary records in EPC file. We only need to say it's not relevant. It's
Okay.
only option. Also, in some cases, the applicants mentioned that they need some improvements in the front office. Their mean to submit the application, because it's not very clear. They need to pay some fees, or they need to provide translations from the beginning. We actually told them it may be requested, but after we submit the full application to the host country, if they ask for it. And from our point of view, we have another situation where the applicants are not very good with computers. They are basic level computer users, and they need the help from the authorities, the home member state authorities.
Okay, so there's a lot of progress that has been made and a lot to make when you see the EPC working in Romania. Any other thoughts that you want to bring up about that from the floor? Any questions you'd like to ask? Is there something that sounds familiar and you think that was my experience, I'd like to back that person up and support their argument or their thoughts? Ask questions? Sure? Now's your chance. Yep, Katja?
I have a comment, because I have just write down that when we think about all the benefits the IMI system offers to contribute the cooperation between member states, they are not fully achieved now. I have written down one example. One typical example would be a situation where the professional has uploaded almost all the documents on the one same file. In this case, it would be very important to explain the situation via additional information field to the host or to the country of destination to help them assess the content of the file. This is typical. Or they think that documents, for example, diploma supplement is not a document. They upload each page separately. It's typical.
Actually, we have the technical point of view and the content. From the technical point of view, I already mentioned, they don't understand how to upload. They are basic level computer users, so they upload each page of one document separately as a different document. But usually, when we encounter some misunderstandings, we communicate by email, usually, or by phone with the applicant and explain how it should be done.
Speed it up. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Don't forget #ProfessionalCard. We've got a Twitter feed, you know, at the moment, and that's worth always a look to see what people are saying or thinking, because we're also being streamed live on the web, not just within this particular room. Zara Green is from the UK Assistance Centre for Professional Qualifications. Now, interestingly, when it comes to mountain guides, the UK does not have a professional qualification in mountain guiding. The UK is what is called a non-regulated country in this. So there are lots of implications. Zara, start us off. What are the first implications of all this? Because presumably you still have to support guide applications for mountain guiding positions from British nationals.
So we really want to give mountain guides the best opportunity to present a complete set of documents when they're applying to another member state. But we found that we can't confirm there's a regulated qualification because one doesn't exist, or we can't confirm that someone has full-time experience in the UK as a mountain guide because typically that isn't what mountain guides do. So what we're trying to do is work with the mountain guides and make suggestions as to the different documentation they can present us. But what we don't know is then how that will be accepted in the member state that they're applying to practice in on a temporary basis.
So how can you prove that somebody is a guide if you can't regulate them?
We ask for proof that if they're self-employed, we would ask for proof of that. We are looking to ask for references from anyone that may have employed them. We're also looking at the possibility of stating that a document just doesn't exist. For example, I know some member states ask for proof that someone hasn't been declared bankrupt. Now, the UK doesn't have a document, an official document to do that. So all that we can do is say if you went onto a website, put the person's name in, it wouldn't show on the list of people that have been declared bankrupt. So we're trying to find different ways to work around it. We're working with the Commission and with our government in the UK to see what we can do, because we don't want our mountain guides to get to the end of an EPC application and then find they just aren't going to be recognised when they move.
So if there's no professional qualification, you try and give as much information about that person's experience as possible. How can you prove that experience? How do we know that that has not been manufactured by the applicant?
In truth, we can't. And that's the problem. We provide a different service for the trade and craft professions, and I guess our experience in that is relevant. So for hairdressers and plumbers, they're not regulated in the UK, and I know they are in lots of other countries. So we certify someone's experience based on essentially what they tell us and proof that they have been paid to work in a certain profession or that they've been registered as self-employed, as an example. The issue is that the UK doesn't record the professional activities that professionals carry out when they're self-employed. So it's very difficult.
When you look at the procedures that you are being required to follow online, are there technical improvements in processing EPCs that could be made, do you think?
Yes, I think if there is a standard document that is available that meets the documentation criteria, it would be useful for that to be stated, perhaps in the simulator, or perhaps the standard information that can be provided. I think because we're the authority for mountain guides and real estate agents, they don't have anyone else to ask in the UK in an official capacity. So I think perhaps we should be providing that information too.
Okay. Luca, is there anything that you would pick up on there that you would comment and translate to your experience with estate agents?
I think that a lot of remarks have been made today that will give a lot of work to the European Commission. I think for our profession, the baseline is not within the EPC, but is underlying. I think there is an enormous diversity in regulations. The plumbers that are not recognized in Britain that are in Belgium, as a matter of fact. I think that there is a lot of work to be done. I'm looking at maybe a common training framework, a common recognition framework that might be solutions for a far future, because I realize that a lot of problems have to be solved, because if it's common, we have to look at a plumbing platform, a common level, and where will it be situated? Will it be the higher level? If we look at recognition in my profession, will it be the Belgian level, or will it be the Hungarian level or the Dutch level where there is no recognition? I think, frankly, that the major questions are underlying to the actual EPC.
Okay. Let me hear thoughts from the floor about this, because this is quite an important area about how we make it straightforward as much as possible, and without ironing out or coming against the individuality or the idiosyncrasies of each particular state or each particular region. How do we allow everybody to come together with this mutual trust in order to create something that works for people? I really want your thoughts about that, if you have any ideas about what could happen on a technical basis that would help improve things. Yep, Alberto there. Hashtag professional card is another thing to look out for as well. Alberto, good.
So I just go back about what's my role in a certain way. That I am IFMGA member and coordinator of the International Federation of Mountain Guides. So we have a standard, it's worldwide recognized. So I would suggest that would be a goal for mostly the profession to have a standard qualification recognized from an international federation. For us it's easy because our federation is quite old, born in the Alps countries and now developed all around the world, from Peru, Nepal, so it's really recognized. By the way, to Sarah Green, I would suggest also that would be quite easy. For example, just practical way, if a British mountain guide has an IFMGA diploma and you send it to the Italian minister because he wants to go to the Alps to climbing, the Italian minister straight away recognizes a standard. If he doesn't have an IFMGA diploma, the standard is that for the minister of the sport, Italian. So should be working that way, I hope.
So you're hoping that British mountain guides get an international qualification, a qualification from somewhere else, and that would allow them to be recognised with getting an EPC?
Yeah, but I mean, inside the Great Britain, there's already the association that have the standard, and they have the formation in IFMGA standard.
So that could be created within the UK?
It's already created,
yeah,
I would say.
Created.
So but somebody doesn't have it, still he can apply it because maybe he got it in another country, for example, or somewhere else.
Okay. Zara, thoughts on that?
The qualification doesn't belong to the UK, does it? It's international, so it should be recognised perhaps in a different way, perhaps not using the EPC, just saying I have this, I am fully qualified, may help.
How do you cooperate with the other member states in this regard?
We've tried emailing some member states to get feedback from them on what their experience has been, particularly the member states that are in the same position as us. So we've been in contact at various points with different professional organisations.
Yes, and your views on the relevant IMI exchanges in general?
We only receive questions from IMI, we don't send them as an authority. In general, I think it works well. We receive lots of repetitive questions, I would say, which is a shame. But I think that's the legal position of certain states, that they have to have an answer for each professional. So I understand it, but it is a little frustrating, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Any other mountain guides in the audience who want to come back about anything? Any physiotherapists or estate agents who want to raise something to do with the professional bodies? There's an awful lot of silence. Alexandru, let's go back to you again, because I'm interested in what lessons you think that we can learn from Romania's experience when it comes to improving the technical procedures of adopting the European Professional Card.
Actually, we have a lot of things to share. I will try to be not so very long. We have created new ways to verify the authenticity and validity of documents, because this is essential for EPCs. And actually, we register a lot of so-called relevant authorities in the system. And we have also the cases where we receive documents for authorities not registered in the system. And for these cases, we have two situations, or three. Because some documents can be sometimes found in public records, but these records are not our records, are from other authorities, and we need to obtain the written consent from the applicant according to our national legislation to check its data in another authority record. Also, we found that it's very important to provide alternative ways for validation, quicker ways, because sometimes it takes long to validate with other authorities. And in some cases, we ask the applicant to provide the original document at our headquarters, and we have legal provisions that allow us to validate on the spot the copies of the document as according to the original. Also, we, in some cases, applicant is not available to come to our headquarters, and we can ask the applicant to provide certified, legalized copies of the documents, and we also verify in a public database who is the authorized person who certified those documents. Also, regarding our best practices, I would like to share with you, we have a few things to say. From our experience, it's important to have a constant and ongoing collaboration with authorities from national level, public institutions for the validation of all of these documents, but it's important to train the IMI users from these authorities to get the feedback on time. And also we have try to provide support all the time by phone and email to all these IMI users at national level. But also we advise you to create, as we did, some flexible procedures for the validation of documents outside IMI, because as I mentioned, we have only some kind of authorities for professional qualifications registered, but not for professional experience, ID documents, and so on. And we also are involved in the development of a long-term strategy for the implementation of EPC and IMI in Romania. And I would like to say, dear colleagues, that it's also important to have a permanent collaboration with competent authorities from other member states. And I think this is the key. And I think the EPC is a proof of importance of our mutual collaboration and consequently of our mutual trust. And our final recommendation will be that mutual trust is a must among member states, while the final beneficiary is a citizen.
Mutual trust and not mutual suspicion. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Any questions from the floor? I want to bring in Zolta Magyar in a moment, who's very much involved in this particular system that has been set up, and I want him to answer some of the points that you've raised, if that's all right, Zoltan. Any thoughts about language, documents, all those sorts of things? Yep, point there. Anybody else I should move the microphone to too? Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Tatiana. I'm Danish coordinator for the Professional Recognition Directive. I have one practical question because we haven't talked a little bit about the evidence of legal establishment. It will be much more interesting, maybe I'll talk about it later today. But I would like to know, in case that home member states doesn't regulate professions, how do you in practice handle the question of legal establishment? Because it's not the document, but it is information that is obligation to provide from the member state to the host member state. Well, we are maybe in the same boat as the UK as far as it concerns mounting guides. But we have actually received last week one mounting guide request for professional card, and now we are discussing this opportunity to help the applicants and in the same way to prove legal establishment in Denmark, because you don't have mountains, so you are very easily established in Denmark as mountain guide. Thank you.
Documents that we would accept as proof would be registered as self-employed, potentially, contracts with employers if they are employed, or pay slips we would accept as well. I don't think there's anything else in the UK. There's registration as a limited company with Companies House, but other than that, I don't think there's any other documentation that I'm aware of.
But you also ask for their experience outside the UK, don't
Yes.
you? It's not just simply internal.
No, it's something that we've only faced in a very recent application with a mountain guide that had experience in member states where it was regulated. So I think that's a slightly different case. But if someone had experience in member states where it wasn't regulated, I think that would be very difficult for us to confirm.
Okay, Senis?
I would like to add something to the issue of the language. In our experience, in many instances, we answer in our national language, and often they request us to reply in English. So they don't. The language barrier still exists in many instances, and we would like to see this being improved in the near future.
How would you do that? What would you prefer?
Well, I think that has to do with the translation tool, which doesn't work correctly at the moment. So that might be helpful if that would be improved.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is some member states, as Heinrich already said, require translated documents only in their own language and do not accept other languages. For the purpose of the IMI system was that the language barriers would be lifted because the home member state would evaluate the documents, validate the documents in their own language, and the host member state just had to accept the validation of the home member state. So we would like to see that being improved in the near future.
Okay.
And I also have some comments on the communication. It would be helpful if communication between the host and the home member state would be possible before transmitting the application. So if there are any questions beforehand, that could be solved, and the process would be much more quicker if we had the possibility to ask questions before sending out the application to the host member state.
Is that something that people agree with? That you can send out questions first? Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask a question in relation to the issue of trust, where you have had experience with a competent authority in the past where the information that's been provided has been incorrect, which could be for lots of reasons, including human error. How do you then move to that level of trust whereby you'll accept an electronic verification of documentation?
Well, we haven't experienced this kind of situation yet, but well, you're innocent till proven guilty. So if you have one experience with one country, then you would be careful with this country, but that wouldn't apply to all of the other member states.
Not that I agree with you, but we would have had incidences with more than one member state, which does make us hesitant to rely on electronic verification. So as a competent authority, we do have to move to a level of trust, but our experience would not be such that we were willing to move to that level of trust for some member states.
I understand.
That is an issue that the Commission does need to address.
Okay, I'll put that to them in due course, don't worry. Is that something else that you would say as well, that, you know, with all the best will in the world, actually from experience, you can't trust?
We don't have this experience, but of course, we do look at the documents, but we try to respect the idea of the IMI process and accept the documents as filed by the home member state. But of course, our people do look at the documents, but not in the same way as in the regular procedure. There's something else I would like to add to the point of the validation of documents. Even though we trust the validation, we do experience that validation is sometimes missing. And even if we request, especially for validation of the documents, our request remains unanswered. So we hope that our requests are being read by other member states and are being answered when requested.
Okay, thank you. Irena, you wanted to say something as well? Yep, microphone coming. And somebody at the back with a microphone too? Yes? You want what? Just pop there first.
I just wanted to back up these requests that it would be very convenient for authorities to ask their counterparts in the other country in the first stage of the procedure, because that's also a reaction that I heard from some authorities, because then problems can be solved at an early stage. And it's also a thing that we discussed with the Commission, and but it's I think it's also a technical problem.
Okay. There's somebody at the back, is there? Yep. Anybody else over here? Roland?
I have a question of the validation to Alexandru, the Romania College. The professionals are not regulated in your country, like the physiotherapist. When I send you documents that you have to validate, then do you prove the reference professional to the physiotherapist? It's a big problem that we don't know which qualifications are able to work as a physiotherapist in Romania. Do you understand what I mean?
For physiotherapy, there is a specific situation. I think you are aware of it. At the beginning of EPC, this profession was considered not regulated in Romania. However, there was some authority at regional level which issued the right of free practice. We actually managed to register all these authorities in IMI to get feedback from them. Later, at the end of last year, there was a new law for the regulation of this profession. The law was approved, and they had 3 months to implement this law. But until now, we passed this deadline. There is no competent authority fully operational. And we act at the present time also like the profession is not regulated in IMI. But we have, however, a law with all the answers you are looking for, which are the qualification titles specific for this profession. And if you ask us or other authorities which are the professional qualification, we may receive some answer with reference with this law.
Problem. So the last country is is Poland. It isn't regulated.
So it's not implemented, this law, fully.
Okay.
It provides some effects, but not fully implemented.
All right. Roland, do you have a point you want to make as well? Anybody else with a microphone? Go ahead.
Yes, especially when it comes to criteria and documents, especially to first of all for translations, we see that I saw a case in the Belgian government asking for a translation of a diploma from Finnish to either French or Flemish, knowing that in Belgium there's a state reform and the whole system is being dispersed on out of 2 regions, which makes us completely handicapped as a professional association, speaking as a Belgian right now, from the professional association. So I need to clarify the whole thing to my colleagues who are sitting in those boards, doing the recognition processes. They are struggling to find out what the EPC actually is. So it's a kind of difficult problem. Now, when it comes to translations, I don't see the use of a translation of a diploma. It makes more sense to me what the content is, what the competences are, to define if there are compensation measures necessary. So sometimes I see that documents, as you said already, are absolutely not needed at all. And I think that there needs to be a kind of proportionality evaluation of all the required documents and see what is really necessary only just to get the qualification recognized and not for all the rest. And maybe there are some circumstances for recognition which make a little bit of a difference, but I think we have to reduce, and we're collaborating with the Commission, to reduce that to the strictly necessary and avoid and take away all the burdens that we actually don't need to get this working.
But what do you do about the countries who don't follow the rules?
It's a good question. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be able to do something. I think that's for the Commission to take on board within negotiations with the member states, of course.
But it's actually the distrust of certain countries that holds other countries back and leads them to ask for more documentation, for example, or to verify their documentation in other ways. So in a way, you can't blame some countries for being meticulous in the sorts of information that they require.
But I think if I look to my Belgian colleagues, it's a bit in the culture. They've been already very, very picky when it comes to Belgium, because Belgium has the highest education rate for physio entry level. It's a 5-year master. And they kind of become a little bit protective for that, so they become a little bit of pickery on the documents. That's a little bit of the problem. You know, if you have a difference of entry level, then they try to kind of protect the patients, you know, by patient safety, by knowledge, and by all the different aspects. I don't know if there's somebody from the Belgian government here who had to deal with the recognitions. He can probably, you know, confirm that possibly. So I hope so, at least. But that leads to these differences of entry level which provoke this actually to be a little bit more pickery. Or defensively, when you have a workforce which is exceeding the necessities in a country, then you see this, you know, this kind of reluctance.
Okay. Any more thoughts from the floor about this? I do want to bring up Zoltan in a moment, if you don't mind, Zoltan, to answer a few questions about the technical things that people are suggesting, or to give a view from the Commission about it. But I'm interested in finding out from you what it is that would be important for you to change or improve. At the back, another point, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Constanze Lernhardt, also from the district government of Düsseldorf, North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. My question would be, since we are talking a lot about the documents that are handed in and that cannot be read in the host country, in the host member state, if it is at all been given a thought to maybe issue some possibility for the documents to be translated, because what I see is maybe not even distrust, but maybe also the sheer fact that the responsibility for documents is given out of our hands as issuing competent authorities. So we rely on other authorities for the documents, and we just we are the machine that hands out the document. And I think this creates a weird feeling of insecurity, because we want to actually act in a responsible way. So this would maybe be a way to give back some of the feeling of control, so to say, not meaning that we actually verify the documents on our own, but we can at least read them, or at least grasp the content.
Okay. Any other points? Sorry, go ahead.
Sultan. I have some suggestions for improvement to the European Commission. While a messaging system is available, there's no way to verify that a message has been read by the receiving authority. And often a request to a home member state with regards to validation isn't answered because of that. Maybe it's possible to build in an option of message read, so we can trust that the message has been delivered successfully. And we also experience that all of the EMI users, competent authorities, receive an email notification within an EPC application. And this creates a situation that multiple people are being notified when it's not necessary to notify them. So we suggest that only the people, the national contact handling the application receives the notifications. So it's clear that which person or authority is in the lead at the moment. But we do experience that often changes in status of an application aren't notified. So maybe that's a technical issue, we don't know, but we wanted to point it out today. And for us, it would be very helpful if the dashboard option could be expanded as to provide us a total of EPC applications divided by profession, divided by country, how many were relevant for the Netherlands as a host or relevant as a home member state, just in general management information, and that also applies for the EPC the alert mechanism procedure. And finally, we would like to suggest the possibility to flag relevant alerts and EPC applications. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's plenty to put to the Commission on that. Can we have a microphone up at the front, please? I've got one. Great. Okay, thank you very much. Zoltan, if you wouldn't mind standing up, if that's okay. Thank you, so everyone can see you. Zoltan works with the IMI very much, understands the technical things that you have mentioned, and I'm interested in finding out from you whether you think some of the suggestions that have been put forward about improving it are A, practicable, and B, you're going to implement.
What? Okay, it works. So, yes. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm really glad to hear this feedback and directly from you, and especially with regards to the document requirements and the need to improve many things in that sense. Because in the beginning we were facing a problem that member states didn't take it serious enough, that these document requirements need to be notified, need to be clear, need to be absolutely evident for the professionals and for the competent authorities. So in that sense and in all the other senses, I made a long list for myself for the suggested improvements. Many of them we can absolutely take on board, and we will. Some of them I will present in the afternoon because we just put them in place, but I keep the details for the afternoon. And we are going to do whatever we can. It's all together that we can make it work better, we can improve it. So there are certain things that technically we can improve in the system, but there are certain things that we will never be able to do. We will never be able to teach all professionals how to scan their documents and how to upload them in the system. I mean, I can put up a checklist for them, but that will not solve our problem if they will keep scanning the documents page by page, or if they eventually upload everything in one single file. And we are going in many cases in the direction that we could instruct the professionals and we could present more information. We could present the details of the procedure more in details on the website within the application. But how can we make them to read this? How can we ensure that if there is an exclamation mark, if there is a reminder, that they will do it? Since the very beginning, we remind professionals that they have to upload documents. There are still applications without documents attached. There are certain things that we can do. As I said, we have already put some improvements in place. The timing is not because of this moment, but because we just completed the testing of certain features and we just released it. And there are some new improvements in the pipeline, especially with the communication between the authorities. If I can pick that up just quickly, allowing to exchange information before transmitting an application. Well, so far nothing stopped the authorities to communicate with others and send a request to the other authority, to the other member states, or to communicate. But it was, I fully agree, it was not clear enough, it was not easy, it was not straightforward. We are at the moment testing a feature which would allow to create a linked request from the EPC application with a reduced input, but allow for a communication between the authorities. With the verification of documents, there was one point which I think we would need to clarify, that without verifying the documents, the applications cannot be transmitted to the host. So if there is a missing verification, that's because there were some additional documents required while the application was handled by the host. So we have to be very clear on the circumstances and find the best technical solution for this. And there is one clarification or correction that I must make, because it was quite misleading when we heard the input. It has never been the case that in 2 days the application or the completeness of the application had to be verified. The legal deadline for this is 1 week. So that has always been the case, that's the legal deadline, and actually the system is generous enough and kindly puts some additionals day to day before formally additional or missing documents can be requested. The areas that were mentioned are all on our radar. In the afternoon, as I said, I'll present some of the improvements that we put in place. And for the rest, the list is here. It's also with András and with all my colleagues. So we know where to move forward, but we do count on your collaboration, especially when we are going to improve the repository of document requirements or when we are going to put new functionality in place. Because we can put it in place, but you will have to make it work, and you have to fill in the details in the repository, or the competent authorities of your member states will have to provide all this information.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope that is helpful for you to put a face to the person who's behind the technical improvements, and that you know what to say to him and how to bring it on. And we will look forward to hearing all that this afternoon. We're coming towards the end. I'm interested in 2 or 3 more points from the floor and the closing comments from the panelists as well. So if you've got anything you want to raise or question or comment upon just at the moment, do put your hand up. In the meantime, I'm going to take closing points from Katja.
Oh, me first. I was waiting someone
to
ask something. Okay. I have a few suggestions here from technical point of view. Now I would like to discuss this regulated professions database, because official titles of the professions of the host member states or country of destination, given in their own languages, might not be up to date in the regulated professions database. In database, the professional titles may have been listed, for example, as generic names of the professions. So, of course, we can find the titles of nurses and pharmacists from directive, but not the titles of physiotherapist, for example.
Okay. So that's one thing to look out for and improve upon.
Improvement would be, I would kindly like to ask if it's possible to add the personal titles of the host member states or country of destination in their own languages in the IMI system repository, because this is the place where the home member states will visit when checking notifications anyway. If not, then database could need, at least in some respects, updating. Then shortly about these fields, messages between authorities.
Anything that you want to point up in particular about the messages between authorities as you close?
I have something for the space. So we have difficulties when, for example, when we are requesting documents and we are writing something, so we don't have much space to do that. We would like to use numbering, spacing, and so on, so it would be more readable to the applicant too.
Okay, I'm sure they're taking note on that one. Thank you very much indeed. Luke, closing comments from you?
Well, I think that we mentioned quite some issues in improving the European Professional Card, and if the front row on my left side would mention to realize half of the mentioned issues within the coming 6 months, then I think it would be a huge step forward.
Thank you. Any thoughts from the floor? Anybody wants to get a final word? Yes, go ahead, Irina.
It's not a final word, I'm sorry. But I have another point for Zoltan's list. That's why I'm sorry for him. It's regards the issue that we talked about, the national validity of the EPC, and it would help us in overcoming these problems if we could have a function that when one Austrian region issues this EPC, the other regions who regulate it would be informed of this EPC.
Thank you. Zara, to end.
I just think that communication is always really important, and I think there's got to be a good way for authorities to communicate trust, and I think it's just knowing what's the best way, and I don't know what the best way is, but I think everyone here can sort of put an input into how they can trust each other better, I think.
Alexander.
I already mentioned, I will repeat a little bit, we should always keep in mind that the final beneficiary is a citizen and that mutual trust between all the authorities involved in this procedure is a must.
And Senis, what would you say to close?
Well, I have made all of my comments already, so I'm not going to repeat them. I want to thank the European Commission for this chance to share our experiences and hear the challenges and the best practices of other authorities. So thank you.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you very much to the panel for presenting their cases, and also to everyone in the audience who has contributed as well. That was about improving very much what was going on with the EPC. This afternoon we're on the alert mechanism, so we're going to pick up in the afternoon at 2:30. So you've got quite a long lunch, plenty of time to network and swap business cards and have a chat and have a think about what you've heard this morning. But in the meantime, thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you at 2:30.